Welcome to my first ever makeup tips tutorial. So today we're going to be talking about how to do your skin, how to make it look flawless, how to get the right foundation, colour matching and moisturiser, what kind of skin type you have, that kind of thing. So all these are important factors into getting the right foundation for you and making sure that you feel really good and you have that nice sense of confidence when you're stepping out and when you're making a base for the rest of your makeup look. So I don't actually know how often I'm going to waffle on. It's going to be a voyage of discovery for all of us, so let's just see how we go. So first off, moisturise. For me, moisturising is a thing that a lot of people are now used to doing, but not everybody does daily. It's something that personally I like to do because of what skin type I have. I like to use this L'Oreal Wrinkle Expert one, and this is for my age range, so it's around, well, it says 35 plus and I'm 28, so it's a little bit above, and I tend to go 5 to 10 years above the age range I have. It's always worked for my mum, it always works for me. Anything really high, so like I had one that was a 60 plus, for my skin would probably be a little bit too rich, but some people who have super dry skin might actually benefit from that, so it is really up to you what kind of moisturiser you like to use. But firstly, before you can even decide what moisturiser you want, you need to know what kind of skin type you have. So for me, I actually have really dry skin, even though you can't really tell at the moment. I have dry skin. So what a lot of people don't realise is that just because as a teenager you had oily skin doesn't necessarily mean that at 20 it's going to be oily still. Just because in certain temperatures you find that you sweat doesn't mean you don't have dry skin. It's all about getting into the mirror and having a good look at what kind of skin type you have. So when I'm touching my face here, I can feel that it's dry. Even though I've moisturised, I can feel that naturally it's quite dry. So this place here where your pores will be visible is probably the best indication of what kind of skin you have. Now, people with oily skin, I can recommend Formula 10006, and that is a brand you can buy off beautybay.com. It's really good, and they do a moisturiser called Seriously Shine Free. It's the best one I've personally found for people with oily skin. I can only personally speak from my experience, which is I have dry skin, so there's probably going to be more tips for people with dry skin on this channel, but it doesn't mean that you won't get the odd thing that will help you if you have oily skin. And it doesn't mean that this doesn't apply to you if you have oily skin. It's just one of those things that people find. Plus, a lot of it's about personal preference, so it's just one of those things. I like to use this, which is the L'Oreal Paris Fine Flowers Milk Cleanser. And this has rose and jasmine. So rose, if you didn't know, is great for, you see how I've got red patches? If anyone has rosacea or reddening of the skin, this is brilliant. It just takes down all that redness and gives you a calmer base on which to work, which is why I use it before I put my foundation on, as well as to take it off with. So also you can see here there's a little tag that says for dry and sensitive skin. On most products, like cleanser, like toner, moisturiser, etc., you will find that they will give an indication of what kind of skin they're designed for. So if you find a primer that says hydrating, it's probably designed for dry skin. If you say a primer that is shine free, it is probably for oily skin. Sometimes they will tell you, sometimes it's a little bit more obscure and you have to find out the hard way, but essentially you can find out. So I've just used this, and I've just used the matching toner, which is the same kind of thing. Really nice. It comes in really big bottles. Quite regularly this is as well if you're from the UK. Regularly this is in Superdrug, and it's cheap and cheerful, and they have a lot of deals on, so this is really good stuff. I mean, it's a really good price for how much product you get. Obviously I've used this to death. I use it every day. Now, a lot of people also like to use lip balm. For me personally, I find that I'm a little bit allergic to Vaseline, so I find it really drying on my lips. So I actually like to use organic coconut oil. This stuff is great. If anyone has ever healed a tattoo, you know this stuff is great. If you've ever found that you want something to if you've got really dry skin, I actually sometimes, when I find that I'm really dry, put this all over my face. So oil is the thing that holds the water, the moisture into your skin to keep it moisturised. A lot of people think putting water on your skin or putting water-based products on your skin will make it more moisturised. It won't, because it's the oil in your pores that holds the water into your pores, because obviously oil and water don't mix, so it creates the oil creates a barrier that stops the moisture getting out. So I like to get this, and I like to get my little spatula, and I like to just get a little bit out and put it on. Anyone that's used coconut oil knows that it melts pretty fast. It's really nice. I sometimes put a little bit under my eyes just in case I need a bit more moisture in certain places. If I feel anywhere dry, I tend to just put a little bit. And the reason I use a spatula, these are really cheap from Amazon, and it just means that every time you're dipping in, so long as you keep this clean, you're not going to be dipping in a finger or a fingernail. You're not going to get all the dirt from under your fingernail. You're not going to get product caught in your fingernail or whatever else that's going to just harbour a little bit of bacteria. So really it's better if you use a spatula if you've got one, or something similar. As I say, they are really cheap and they are really hygienic, so they're just a little bit better. So for me, getting your skin right is something that is a little bit trial and error. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. If you like expensive foundation, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some of them are fantastic, but a lot of people find that they can't find the right one for them, and it's all to do with two main things. It's to do with the undertones in your skin and the type of skin that you have. So for me, I moisturised about an hour ago. So my skin's feeling nice, it's all sunk in, and I cleansed and used that milky toner to give it just that nice tight feeling. So my skin is already prepped, ready for makeup. Now personally, because my skin's dry, I also like to use this. This is the Morphe X Jeffree Star face spray. So you can use any kind of face spray or setting spray that you want. There are ones that you can buy for much cheaper. So for instance, this one, when you shake it, it has an illumination. This is the Makeup Obsession Moon Glow one, so this is a fixing spray also. The only problem I found with this particular product is that it doesn't spray. So it's really annoying, because the product itself is fantastic, but girl, getting it to spray is a chore. So what I suggest, that if you do want to buy around $6.99, I think that the best thing to do is probably to go to Primark and just buy a different spray bottle. I like to use this little Glam Glow one, so these have the same product in. It's just that this bottle actually, by the grace of God, sprays. So really it's down to personal preference. I prefer the Morphe one personally because it's more like an aerosol, so you get a finer mist. But honestly, it really doesn't matter. So once I've moisturised an hour or so ago at least, I like to leave it about an hour. I like to then cleanse and tone to get the excess moisturiser off, get any oil out of my skin. I then like to use this just to hydrate my skin again. So you can already see how that's sitting on my skin, how hydrating that is. So most setting sprays will give you that effect, just to give you that extra little bit before you put any foundation on. So the next step is a good primer. Now this one is by a company called The Ordinary. It is really good because it is a high adherence silicone primer. So this primer is for all skin types and it's good for everyone. It's high adherence, which means it's got a high stick quality. So that means that your foundation is going to be laid down and stick to this really nicely. Now, there are a lot of primers on the market. If they say hydrating, they're probably for a drier skin. If they say shine free, they're probably for an oily skin. This one is for all skin types and retails at £3.80. So it's a really good primer for an extremely decent price. You don't have to spend a fortune. I have another one here, which is a little one from Too Faced Peachy Primer. This is also fantastic, but this one's a little bit more expensive. So really it depends how much you want to treat yourself. But if you're new to doing makeup and you're just wanting to get everything in one place, The Ordinary is a great brand also for foundation, which I'm going to move on to. But this is really good, really cheap, really simple to use. So all I like to do is squeeze a bit out, dot it in the places where I'm going to want it, and then just rub it all in and make sure that it's going to be... I like to rub it a little bit down my neck as well, because I am going to lay foundation down there to make sure my face and my neck are the same colour. So I've laid this down everywhere that I'm going to lay down foundation. So basically the point of a primer is for the foundation to stick to. If you put a foundation directly onto your skin, it's not that it won't work, it's just that this gives you a nice, almost like a barrier between your skin and the foundation. So it's like blurring any pores that might be visible, helping with any redness, anything else, because it's giving you like a cushion between your foundation and your skin. So next up we're going to talk about foundation. Now the thing for me with foundation is a lot of people tend to get the wrong colour. Now that's not because you don't know what colour you are, it's because in a lot of makeup shops they have fluorescent lights. These fluorescent lights make it extremely difficult to find out what actual colour shade you're supposed to be. A lot of people like to get a foundation, whack a little bit on their hand, rub it in and go, "Oh girl, that looked the same colour." Obviously in this case it doesn't, but they say, "Oh, that looks the wrong colour," or "that looks the right colour, I'm going to buy that one or I'm not." But the problem with doing this is that your hand and your face are not the same colour. Your hands and your face aren't the same colour. It's not a true representation of the type of skin that's on your face, because if you look really close at the back of your hand, you can see it's like a skin texture. That's not the same texture that's on your face. So the best thing to do is to actually, if you've got a cotton wool bud, great, but it doesn't really matter, is to actually get a little bit on a cotton wool bud or on your finger and test it here. Now as you can see how true this is to my skin, you can see that it's a decent colour range, and the reason I've done it from face to neck is because obviously you don't want your face to look a different colour to your neck. So you can see here that it is a decent representation of what my skin is. If you're not sure, I would say do this, put a little bit on here, on your jawline, down to your neck, and walk out of the shop into natural light, because that will be the best representation of what it's actually going to look like on your skin. Just go and get a little compact mirror, go and walk into natural light, walk outside, and just have a look at what it actually looks like in broad daylight before you buy it. You don't have to buy anything that you don't feel is right. A lot of people who work in the makeup industry are absolutely fantastic. They would never push you to do that. So they will be perfectly happy to colour match you, or for you to colour match yourself, and then just go and walk outside and check it's the right colour with it on your face here. You know, a lot of people know that it's difficult to find the right shade of foundation. Don't just take my word for it. There are some fantastic people that work on makeup counters everywhere who will be able to help you. Now, to get to the stage where you can actually colour match yourself and know what kind of colour you are, you need to be aware of how pale you are, whether you want to look any darker. Now, a lot of people like to look a little bit darker than what colour they actually are. So for me, I can go a shade darker. This is my true shade, which is very fair with silver highlights because I'm really pale. But I can actually also use the light with yellow undertones because of my skin, because of my complexion. A lot of people also like to buy more than one foundation, one for the winter, one for the summer, because their skin tone changes to such a degree where they need more than one. For me, that's not really an issue because I'm pasty all year round. But basically, it's a personal preference thing. It's about whether you feel comfortable. So really, the only person that can tell you what is right for you is you. So to get to the stage where you can find the foundation that is right for you, you want to figure out what kind of base skin you have. There are two types of different undertone your skin can be. So you can either be yellow toned or pink toned. Now, obviously when you look at me, you can tell that I'm pink toned. You can see that I've got a pink undertone to my skin. You can see where I've got redness. You can see I'm quite pale, so you know it's likely that I'll be red or pink undertoned. And obviously it's not desirable by many people, but I can cover it up. For people with yellow undertone skin, you're thinking of people who are olive toned, who have got that yellow undertone to their skin. As I say, again, when you're ascertaining what kind of skin type you have, whether it's dry or oily, you're going to have a good look in the mirror. Also have a good look to see what kind of undertone you are. Now, the more extreme your undertone, the more you want to avoid using a product of the same undertone. So the basic rule of foundation undertone is that yellow counteracts red and red counteracts yellow, because they are complementary colours. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about colour theory in some of these tutorials, but they are complementary colours, which means they counteract each other. Obviously, green counteracts really extreme red, so I do have some L'Oreal Magic CC cream in green. So what I can do is I can get a little bit of this out and dot it on this god-awful spot. And this green will go under my foundation and make that red less obvious when the foundation's on. If you have a lot of blemishes on your skin, sometimes green is a really good way to just take that colour down and make it a little bit more neutral to work on. So when buying a foundation, the thing you've got to remember is it for my skin type and is it for my undertone? So the foundation I'm going to be using today is from the same brand as the primer, and it is called The Ordinary, and these retail for about £5.80, which is a really good price for a foundation. It is a really nice coverage. It's not too thick, but it's buildable, so this is kind of for everyone. This is a lightweight serum formula, and it has an SPF of 15. An SPF of 15 is high enough if you're going out for a night out. It's high enough if you're going to have your photo taken, because anything higher than that is going to probably give you flashback. If you don't know what flashback is, just Google it. It's where you get like white patches on your face from flash photography. So on a photograph, you'll look like you've got a white patch on your face somewhere. For me, I like to have a bit of SPF because it protects your skin. If you're quite outdoorsy, you probably want a higher SPF. It depends really on what kind of thing you want. So if you want a good photograph, don't have a high SPF. If you want skin protection because you're outdoors a lot or you're going to be in the sun a lot, you want a high SPF, and therein lies the difference. But it is essentially personal preference. So if I was to go into the shop and buy this, I know that I'm quite pink undertoned. So the beauty of the Ordinary foundations is they actually say what undertone they have in them. So you won't get this in many brands. It will just be looking at them and trying to ascertain whether does that look more pink or does that look more yellow. But with the Ordinary foundation, it actually tells you. So this shade is light with yellow undertones and gold highlights. So I know this is perfect for counteracting my redness. Put it next to the other one. It is a little bit darker, but I am actually going to use this one today. And the reason why is because because on my skin, if I just use a really pale foundation that's the same colour as my skin, you won't get the same effect that you get from highlighting areas with concealer and powder. You won't get the same effect from the contour. So for me, it's better to use this one so you can see what I'm going to do. Another thing on foundation is to always think about how dry your skin is and what kind of coverage you want. So for me, I love a full coverage. I love having that mask on. I love having a lot of makeup on. So I like a full coverage foundation, and I like it to look quite matte. However, because I'm already dry skinned, I tend to opt for a semi-matte formula as opposed to a matte formula. If you have oily skin, you'll probably be able just to opt for a matte formula, because matte formulas can be quite drying on the skin. So a semi-matte will always give you a little bit more moisture. If you are really dry, a dewy foundation may be great for you. So it is really down to your skin, getting to know your skin and getting to know what's right for you. Applying foundation. Okay, so when people apply foundation, you can apply it in many different ways. Some people use their hands. Girl, that's not for me. A lot of people use brushes, so I have 3 examples here. This one is one that people like to, it's got a little indent here, which is where people will squirt a little bit of the foundation to dropper it in, and then it's gradually supposed to diffuse out onto your face. I don't particularly use it for that. I actually put the foundation onto my skin first and then buff it in, but it is a nice dense brush, which means it's going to give you a nice full coverage. This one is a big fluffy one. Obviously this is going to get a big area of your face all in one go. It is a really lovely brush and it's a really nice shape. And then this one is if you want a really, really thick full coverage. So a flat brush is always going to pack on a lot of product. You can also use a beauty blender. You will have to excuse mine. They're all minging because of lockdown. I've not been able to get any more. So yes, I'm using a manky one. I'm sorry about that. Applying foundation is really down to personal preference, but essentially you can do it any way that you feel comfortable. Just try a few different ways and see the difference. I'm going to show you the difference here by putting the foundation on each of these brushes and showing you how it blends. So this is the first one here. Obviously it's a softer blend. It's giving me nice blended out curves, and I'm going in a circular motion for each one. So I am dropping this onto the brush. This is the one. Obviously you can see here that this one is giving me more of a streaky effect. That could be because it's a cheaper brush. It's not really an issue because you can just keep blending it. It will eventually blend out. And then on this side I'll use the flat brush. So you can see that this brush means business. It is here to give you that full swipe of coverage. Now, because I like to layer my foundation, I actually like to use the big brush. So I'm going to use that and I'm just going to apply my foundation by blending it all out. And you can see here that the yellow is already counteracting the red. And I'm painting it down onto my neck. Now, some people have asked me about why I paint my ears. I don't usually paint my ears unless I'm going on a night out. And the reason is because some people, when they drink, their ears go red and it looks really different to their foundation. So if you have an updo and you're going to be drinking a lot, it might be worth just putting a little layer of foundation over your ears. So what I'm doing is I'm going in circular motions and I'm just buffing this foundation out to make it perfect. Obviously you can see that it's taking down any redness. So as you can see, I've got my foundation laid down. It looks nice. You know, anywhere that I can see that isn't quite covered, I can go back in with my foundation brush. Like here, for instance, I'm just going to squeeze that foundation brush and get into that little crease around my nose. And you can see now that it's obviously not done. Your foundation is basically just a base. You are probably going to need to add concealer if you want a little bit more. If you just like the natural look, if you put on a dewy foundation like this, it's covered most of my impurities. I could go out like this. At the minute, because this one is darker for the purposes of this tutorial, I do look a bit yellow, but I'm going to counteract that with the other things I use. So next up is concealer. So there are a billion concealers on the market. Some are different. Some people like them to be highlighting, other people like them just to be full coverage. Essentially, concealers are your best friend because they are going to be the thing that covers more than your foundation. The difference between concealer and foundation is that concealer is a different kind of formula which is going to cover more areas, which is going to be more full coverage and just look slightly different on the skin. So for me, I like to use this one, which is the Too Faced Born This Way concealer. There are a billion more. I've got loads. If you want a cheap one, I mean, this is a white version, but they do have other colours, is the Makeup Revolution Conceal and Correct. This is much cheaper. This is about £6 and is equally as good in my opinion. I have stick concealers. There's another one here from Cover and Conceal, MUA Cosmetics. So they come in a lot of different ways. I tend to prefer a cream concealer. Some people like a stick. There is really no right and wrong answer with this. Now, really, for a concealer, if you're going to be wearing a foundation that is the right shade for you, your concealer wants to be a shade or two lighter if you want a highlighting effect. If you want it to look exactly the same, you don't want any highlighting, you just want your face to look snatched, just use a concealer that is the same shade as your foundation. But for me, I like it to look highlighting. I mean, obviously I'm very pale, which is why I've opted for a darker foundation for this video. So concealer, areas that you conceal are areas that you want to be highlighted or want to just look a little bit more covered. So I like to dot this on everywhere that I want to look a little bit highlighted. You can use more than one shade. So I tend to like to put quite a generous amount on. And I'm just going to do all these little areas that just need a little highlight or just need covering a little better. So I've got my beauty blender and I'm just going to gently bounce that into the skin. So you can see here I've already got a nice lighter area. Putting it on this area of your face makes it so your contour looks deeper. I mean, you can see that under my cheek looks deeper already and I haven't put any contour or anything on, just by highlighting the area below it. You see with this side as well, same thing. So I'm just going in a straight line. I'm not going above that cheekbone. I'm not going into the hollow. I'm just going under onto that jawline, just to give it that paler look. I like to do here as well, at the top of my T-zone. So I like to just blend that out. As you can see there, it's given a much lighter effect. So you can see. And you can see now that that is much brighter than it was before. I like this effect. I like it to be this stark. If you don't, you can go for a more similar colour. You can go for one shade lighter as opposed to 2 or 3. You can go for the same shade and it won't give you this brighter look that it's giving me. So you can just do what suits you. But obviously you can see here that it's covered my under eye so much better than this side. Through this side you can see bags under my eyes between these concealer dots, whereas this side looks completely clear. So I'm going to do up my nose. I like to do the centre of my nose, not everybody does. Again, it's personal preference where you want to put these highlights or where you want to put your concealer. Also, I like to put a little bit off the Beauty Blender onto my eyelids just to prime them up a little bit better. And there you have it. Now obviously you can see here, because the foundation I used was darker than my natural skin, there are areas that still look yellow and orange. So to counteract that, I've got a little bit of product left on my Beauty Blender, and I'm just going to just blend a paler colour over the top. Obviously, if you do have a foundation that is too dark, a lighter concealer is going to help to some degree, but if your foundation's not quite the right colour, it's not going to help completely. You can see here where I've missed, so I can just go in with my Beauty Blender and blend that out. Do the other side, blend it out. Now when you're at this stage, your foundation looks great. Going out the house is a chore, because you know that at some point your foundation is going to come sliding off, or it's going to crack, or it's going to crease, or it's just not going to look as good as when you first applied it. Now the best way to counteract that, which is a lot of people know about, is powder. So I like a loose powder, I like a translucent. So translucent is like a colourless powder that is for every skin tone. Some people aren't as keen on this because it does brighten and lighten, so if you don't like that highlighted effect that I was just talking about with your concealer, you're probably not going to like this. So you can use other powders. So on my makeup desk personally, I have a Revolution one that's got a little bit more colour into it. So you can see here I Heart Revolution, and it's got a bit more colour into it. You can buy loads of different shades of powder. The thing to note when you're trying to find the right powder is how lightweight it is. So this stuff is like, it's so soft, it's like baking powder almost. I mean, you can use anything. It just depends how thick you want your coverage. If you want a really heavy coverage, for me I can actually use talcum powder because of how pale I am. Some people like to use a thicker powder, some people like to use a powder that's barely there. Really, that preference is your own, and it's something that no one else can tell you how to feel about. So personally for me, I like to use a technique called baking. This is where you set the powder to the temperature of your face in order to get that flawless finish that means that your powder is going to stay put all day. Now, not everybody likes this. A lot of people find it cakey, a lot of people think it's too much, a lot of people dry skin don't find it to be the best, but for me, I personally love it. So if you are someone that wants your foundation to stay put all day, this might be something for you to try. So what I tend to do is I've got my loose powder, and then I get a little sponge like this and a face spray like that, and I just spray the end of the brush to get it all nice and wet, and dip it into the powder, get loads on there, and then before I put it on, I like to get my Beauty Blender and just make sure there are no creases under my eye, and then I just dab it on and do the same the other side. So I bake anywhere that I have concealer. So for me, I whack a load of powder on. It's going to look loads, but stay with me now. It looks like a lot of product, but this is what's going to keep your powder on all day. You are going to brush this off. It isn't going to look like this when you're done. Obviously, anyone that's seen me with makeup on, I don't usually look like a ghost, so it's fine. So I like to put it everywhere that I've put any concealer. So for me, that's here, up my nose, onto this T-zone. And I'm just going to bake that out. So with this beautiful look, I like to leave I like to leave my powder to set to the temperature of my face for a good 10 minutes or so. Sometimes if I'm in a rush, I tend to leave it about 3 minutes. Really, it's up to you how long you like to leave it for. The longer you leave it, the better it's going to adhere to your skin. So obviously be aware of that when you're doing it. So I'll be back in 10 minutes. And I'm back. So this powder has had time to set to the temperature of my skin, which means it's more likely to stay on for a longer period of time. Now removing the powder is the next stage, and making sure that we're going to get that flawless look. So I like to use a powder foundation, so a pressed powder, any pretty much will do, that's the right colour for your skin. So this one's from George Asda, obviously you can see I've used it to death. And I think this is just a simple translucent one. So I like to get a fluffy brush like this, nice and clean because I've just cleaned all my brushes, and just get in there, dip in, and obviously it's going to look crazy because it's going to be like, why the hell is she putting more powder over powder? But the reason I coat my brush with powder is so that when I'm dusting off the powder that's already on my face, it's going to give me like a little barrier to stop the brush bristles like scraping the powder off my face, and it's going to lay down powder where some might come off and not stick. It's just going to give me a more flawless finish. So the thing to note about taking off a bake is to go carefully and slowly. Now sometimes when I'm in a rush I just smash my bake off, and it is what it is. But if I have time, I like to just gently buff it off in circular motions, and you can see that it doesn't look anywhere near as crazy once it starts to come off. And I'm just coating my brush with that powder foundation again and just bringing it off this side, so you can see that it slowly dissipates into your skin, but you still got that highlighted effect from the concealer. We do the nose. Do under my eyes. Don't panic if it looks like it's not coming off, just keep gently buffing. It will get there on its own time. So you can see here that I've baked, and you can see that the powder is now set to my face. It's giving me that flawless finish. This looks great on flash photography. If you are going to use it for flash photography, you need to make sure that you try and find a powder that doesn't have any mica in it, because mica as an ingredient will cause flashback, much like SPF in foundation. So I've buffed all that off, and now, just to make sure that any areas of my face are not still wet from the wet product, I'm just going to press in a little bit more of this pressed powder everywhere I've got foundation, just to make sure that it's completely dry and sealed in. Now at this stage, if you're thinking, God, I look too powdery, I'm not keen, it looks too cakey for me, get a bit of your setting spray. The MAC Fix Plus is probably the best for this, but anything that contains glycerin will just take away that powdery effect. So I'll take this one over the face, and anywhere that just looks a little bit powdery, I'm going to press in with the beauty blender I used to blend out my concealer, and it would just dissipate any powderiness. Now the thing to remember when doing this is to have a super light hand, because it will take your foundation off if you do it too hard. So just lightly tap in anywhere that you feel might look a bit powdery or a little bit dry, just to give you that flawless finish. And you can see here that my skin is covered. So this is how to get a really good foundation for you. I've got highlighted areas, I've got a nice base. So this is the foundation. My bags under my eyes are covered, which is another great reason why personally I like to bake, you know. And then if you need to touch up throughout the day, you can use a bit of powder and just touch it on in there, just to give it that overall effect. If you have a big makeup bag, you might want to pack the beauty blender you put your concealer on with, just so you can tap out any areas if you feel like you need to, just to keep that foundation looking snatched. And that's about it, really. If you have any questions, you can always comment, leave me a message, anything else, to ask any advice on what else you would like to know. If anyone wants a particular tip on a particular thing to be able to do your makeup, let me know. I'd love to share some ideas and help people who want everyday makeup and find it difficult to do. So that's it from me.